One day, there was this large crowd of people. And in the midst of this large, amazingly giant group of people, 5,000 men alone, there was one little boy. And this little boy was himself very hungry, starving, and was hoping that somehow, some way, he could get to eat soon because him, his family, everyone around him, and this giant mob of people, they were all tired, weary, they'd been traveling, and it was time to stop and rest and get a meal. But the problem was nobody had food. And they're all following this rabbi, this teacher, this man who everyone is kind of mumbling, is he the Messiah? And so the disciples get everyone together. They look at the crowd, and you can read along in John chapter 6, verse 5. When Jesus looked up, he saw a great crowd coming toward him. And he says to Philip, one of his disciples, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" And Jesus asked this only to test Philip, for Jesus already had in mind what he was going to do. Philip answered him, "It would take more than half a year's wages." Half a year's wages. Do some math. What do you usually make in a year? Cut it in half. Like that's a good chunk of money. And he says it would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite. Another of the disciples, Andrew, which is Simon Peter's brother, he spoke up and he says, "Hey, look, here's a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many?" So this boy, all he has is 5 small loaves of bread and 2 fish. Now this kid, he's probably holding on to it because he needs it. This is maybe his food and his siblings' food and his mom and dad's food, his aunt and uncle, grandma, grandpa. Who knows how much in his brain he's thinking, I'm only going to get even a morsel of this anyways, because this is all we had to provide for our own. I don't think that boy was thinking or imagining and preparing to feed more people than just his own. So Jesus, knowing that this little boy had that small amount of food and that Andrew brought to him, Jesus says in verse 10 of chapter 6 of John, "Have the people sit down." There was plenty of grass in that place, and they all sat down. Jesus then took the loaves, the 2 simple fish and the 5 simple loaves. He gave thanks, and he distributed it to those who were seated, and he gave them as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. And when they all had had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, "Gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted." And so they gathered them, and then they ended up filling 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. I don't know if you're a mathematician, but 5 loaves of bread filling 12 baskets doesn't make sense. And that is because Jesus did something with this boy's trust. This boy had no intention. He had no desire of trying to figure out, today I'm going to do a miracle. I'm going to be a part of a miracle. All this boy did was he trusted Jesus with what was in his hands. What's in your hands today? Not only can God use anything that we have, but all that we have to do, everything that we have, if we just commit it to God, if we say, "God, I entrust this to you. I entrust my family, my money, my job, my career, my finances, my future. God, I entrust this to you." God can not only use it, but God will make sure that someone else is blessed because of your trust. See, these people all around Jesus that day were starving. And they were starving because the situation they were in is they were following Jesus. And so was this boy. And instead of complaining, instead of hoarding his food, and instead of running, like, I don't want to deal with this conflict, I'm kind of scared I'm going to lose my food and my family's food. No, instead, when the moment came, he just trusted Jesus with what he had. What do you and I have right now that we can feel like God wants us to trust him with? What do you have in your hands, in your wallet, in your life, in your car, in your home, that you can trust Jesus with today? What exactly could be stirring within us that maybe Jesus wants us to be generous with something that we typically would be hoarding? See, this boy ends up being used by God simply because he trusted Jesus with what he had. And that's still the lesson every day for you, for me, for everyone. What do you and I have at our disposal that we could be generous with? And we choose generosity because we trust the one we're giving it to.